also known as Congo and Angola. An estimated 12.4 million
All
people
praises to Yahweh,
were loaded
Bashem
on slave
Yahushua,
ships
Bashem
and
Karkadash.
carried through what
Double
became
honors to
known
the
as the Middle
elders,
Passage,
Israel, the
which
apostles,
moved
the
across
bishops,
the
and
Atlantic
all Israel,
and included many
the
different
priests,
destinations.
Once in the
the
Americas,
elders,
the surviving slaves were
the
sold in the
deacons,
market,
the
very similar
captains.
to the way cattle
Hey,
would be
shalom
sold.
to you
After
all,
purchase, slave owners
and
would
your
often
household,
brand their
your
new
sisters,
possession on
the
the
sisters,
cheeks, again,
the kids.
just as they would do with cattle.
Shalom
The
to you
lives
all.
of slaves were dominated by work
You know what I mean? The
and
sincere
care.
brethren
The idea
were
that I am
hope for be saved. You know
that
what
I
I
have
mean?
no
So,
soul, that I am a beast. Brand
me don't walk today and
burn me.
I think
Whatever. And no
go up on the
recourse.
road and
Nothing.
I say, you know what? Me say,
The history of humanity
me
is
that
filled with
think to that,
oppression,
like, I don't know if
war,
one of the
and
IUIC brother them
Since the
watch
beginning of time, people in different parts of the
Are
world
there-
have forced their fellow humans into slavery.
with something that
The tale of
See,
the
come on,
Atlantic
man.
slave trade
And the
is
spirit
the
that say,
history
yo,
of millions
this
of
going on.
Africans who were forced out of their communities by European slave traders
What is this
and shipped
thing
across
done
the
to us,
Atlantic
man?
in conditions of great cruelty. When Portugal and Spain started conquering and establishing
You
colonies
know, what is
in the
thing
New
done to
World
us?
in the early 1500s, they forcefully made the Indians work their plantations. However, European diseases and the violence of conquest led to the death of many of the Indian slaves.
You know?
This led to a labor
And
shortage in Europe.
we as a
and made
we
the
as a people, the
Europeans
spirit
look
say, yo,
towards
going on
Africa
this
for a
topic,
solution.
going this
As
topic
voyages
today.
to Africa progressed, and with many expeditions by Portuguese and Spanish explorers, Africa became a major source of supply of slaves to Europe. And the Spanish West Indies,
You know,
as well as the Portuguese colonies in Brazil, the Indian slaves were gradually replaced by Africans.
Going this
These
topic
Africans
today.
were stripped of their identity and occupation. To
Some
refer
say,
to
alright,
them as just
I'm going
slaves
and
is incorrect
the
because
title
before
lesson
being
is,
captured by
hey,
the European,
this-
many of them were farmers, merchants,
We still suffer
soldiers,
today from this,
musicians,
man.
goldsmiths, blacksmiths, and many more. They were husbands, fathers, wives, children, and mothers. They had origins.
You know
and
what I mean? We
heritage,
still
but when
suffer
the
today
Europeans
from this.
came and took over their communities, they became captives and had to be boarded on large ships and taken to Europe.
Both
The
men-
European
both
slavers
spiritually,
dispersed them
mentally,
across the Americas, and
both
different parts
spiritually,
of Europe.
mentally,
They were
and
forced to lead
emotion-
lives under
everything.
terrible conditions and face severe labor conditions. They were stripped and flogged and forced to work
We
very
all
long hours,
suffer as a
often
nation
under
from
terrible
this.
weather and
Don't
health
make nobody
conditions.
tell us, oh,
The transatlantic
all of
slave
these little
trade
Uncle Toms
transported
out there,
between 10 million and
we have
12
boots
million
up, them have them
enslaved
little
black
job and-
Africans across the Atlantic Ocean to the Americas.
You know what I mean?
You might have heard of the Triangle
have them
trade,
little
right?
job,
and how Africa was a major
and
part
them have
of
them
this
little
trade,
job,
although
and
suffering
think-
economically, while the other two parts that made up the triangle enjoyed huge economic benefits. We'll get to that shortly. The first
And things
slave
say, hey,
voyage from Africa to the Americas
hey, everything's
is
all
believed to
good.
have sailed
Hey, the
in
white man
1526. But
in
even
good-
before this period, Africans
Hey,
were bought
your
as
kids
slaves
suffer
directly
from this,
Europe,
man. If this
and
place was
even
supposed to
native
gone,
inhabitants of
hey,
America were
what-
also
that's the
enslaved
last
by
video
European
I'ma make, the
explorers.
500 year
Before
head start.
1518, the Spanish monarchy
The 500
didn't
year
permit the
head start.
transportation of African slaves from Africa, not due to a sense of moral value or humanity, but because they believed Africans were barbaric and that they would corrupt the European society and introduce pagan and non-Christian practices to the country. However, over the years, due to economic reasons, there was a U-turn in that decision, and on August 18th, 1518, King Charles V granted a
we all
charter to
suffered from
Lorenzo
this.
de Goravade to transport 4,000 slaves directly from Africa to the Spanish-American
As a
colonies.
people, you know what I mean?
Over time, King Charles changed the law established by his grandparents and then permitted slaves to be brought into
No
Spanish
joke, no going
colonies in
around.
America
No,
from
because your
Africans
kid,
on
your
the condition
daughter
that they would be converted
have a
to
white friend.
Christianity
Yeah, you
during
know,
their voyage
for brothers
across
out
the
the way,
Atlantic Ocean. With this
you
new
know, them
decree
kids in
place,
a
there was
school,
an explosion in the
all
number
of
of
that,
slaves
man, and
moved from Africa to America.
You have a white, no,
There was
that
an
we
immediate
all suffer,
expansion
man.
of the
That
slave
don't
trade
make we,
in the
that
Western
don't make we,
Hemisphere.
that don't
European
make
slave
we.
traders gathered and
That don't
imprisoned
make
the
we-
enslaved at forts on the African coast, and then brought them to the Americas. Generally, the European slave traders did not participate in the raids because their
That
life
don't make we-
expectancy in
that don't make
sub-Saharan
we-
Africa was less than a
That
year
don't make
due
we,
to the widespread malaria
we're
infection.
subjected to
So the majority
benefit
of
in this
people
society.
that
We
were
have to fight,
transported in
cut
the
doors,
transatlantic slave trade
and know if
were
we
people
use this
from
society to
Central
get
and
benefit.
West Africa that were captured by other West Africans and sold to the Western European slave traders. The transatlantic slave trade was essential to the whole economics of the triangular trade route, and European colonies in America needed the supply of slaves for their plantations. Speaking of essential, it's essential for you to like
You
this
know,
video
so,
and subscribe to the channel for more
this is
content
where we're
like
at,
this.
man,
They
and-
don't want us sharing stories like this, but we're going to continue anyway.
The Atlantic
with your
slave trade,
support.
hey,
The triangular
we all
trade.
as a people
Now,
suffer
let's dive a little deeper
from
into
this,
what
man.
the triangular
From
trade
the head
route
come
was all
down.
about. The triangular
Me
trade
myself,
route is
racial
simply the
profile,
trade structure that operated across
lack-
the Atlantic
lack-
region.
lack of
This
financial
triangular trade route
doors,
across the Atlantic
you know what I mean?
took goods from Europe to Africa. Some of the goods taken to Africa include arms, textiles, and wine. On the other side of the triangle was the movement of African slaves to the Americas
I'm gonna go into
and
this
the
thing.
West Indies. The last side of the triangle was the movement of raw materials such as sugar, coffee, tobacco, rice, and cotton produced on American plantations back to Europe. The triangle involved 3 continents, with Europe
Baruch.
providing the capital, Africa providing the labor, and America providing the land and resources. There was always a supply to the European market. The story of the
Baruch chapter
transatlantic
4 and
slave
28.
trade involves the story of all people in the 3 continents, but most importantly, those involved in the Middle Passage voyage.
Baruch chapter 4
The
verse
trade route
28.
that transported slaves is known as the
Behold,
Middle
we are
Passage.
witnessing-
The voyage
we are
is
yet to
often
see in our
marked with a
captivity.
lot of difficulties and even death. Depending on the weather, the voyage could take about 3 to 6 months. The passage was so brutal that the ships not only lost the people being transported as slaves, but in some cases, the crew also lost their lives. The mortality rate for sailors on slave ships was approximately 20%. The ships had a particular design
Behold,
and
Baruch
varied in
chapter 3
size
verse 8.
and passenger
Behold,
capacity.
we are yet
The
this day in
conditions
our
of these ships
captivity,
were inhumane. The African slaves
where
were
thou
locked
hast
up
scattered
below
us
the
for a
deck in
reproach and a
cramped buildings
curse.
and only had a little opportunity to be
Yeah,
out
so
in the
no
sun,
matter if you're in
and
the
they were
top
forced to
college,
carry out certain enforced
you
exercises
still get looked down
in the
upon
form
as
of
a
dancing
nigger in
to
this
ensure
society.
that they were healthy
All of
and
us,
in good posture
from the
when they
head
get
come
to Europe.
down.
Inside of these decks
Me myself,
was sticky
no
and
matter how
filled
much
with the
money and
stench of
status,
dirt,
if
feces,
there's
and
nothing
urine.
wrong
Research
with
published in
getting money
1794
and being powerful.
estimated that a man inside
But
the deck
have it in
had
your
just a
brain,
space
this is the
of
white
6
man
feet
land.
by 1 foot
You
4
still-
inches,
you
and a
still
woman
look down
had
upon.
5 feet by 1 foot 4 inches. The girls had 4 feet 6 inches by 1 foot.
You still look
The
down
air
upon
inside the
in
deck
this society.
was hot, cold, and filled with the incessant smell of dirt and human excreta.
You know what I mean?
The slaves suffered from starvation and thirst, and only had 24 ounces of water every day.
Baruch chapter
i.e.,
3 verse
the
8.
equivalent of
Behold, we are
2
yet this day in our
12-ounce soda
captivity,
cans of
where
fluid
thou
per
hast
day.
scattered us.
Their major food was horse beans and rice.
For a
The
reproach-
captives were packed tightly in
for a
tiers
reproach and a
below
curse.
decks and were chained together, hands and feet. The voyage
For a
was
reproach and a
characterized
curse,
by many
and to be
difficulties,
subject
and the
and to be
captives were faced
subject
with issues that
to
included
payments
epidemic
according to
diseases
all the
and
iniquities of
attacks
our
by
fathers,
pirates.
which
They also
departed from
experienced
the
physical,
Lord
sexual,
our God.
and psychological abuse by slave traders and crewmen. An estimate by historians put it that between 15 and 25% of the enslaved Africans bound for the Americas died during
You
this
know what I
voyage.
mean? So,
The
we
conditions
fall,
were
man.
so severe that
From
only a tiny
grace we
percentage
fall.
of the Africans transported
Sorry,
in the
we
slave
fall,
trade came
we
directly
fell.
to North America.
Lord
Just
willing, me,
about 4% of the total
in the
Africans
chains of darkness,
transported,
man.
not
Lord willing,
more
me
than
is a member of that.
400,000 arrived in North America.
It's a part of the
directly.
lake we're going to
A
get
vast
back,
majority
release,
of the slaves
updated
were
back
sent
in
to the
the
Caribbean
immortal
and
body.
South America, and almost
That's the one me
half of
fight
the
for.
slaves that were captured and transported out from
there's-
Africa, totaling about 5 million,
We're
were sent
almost
to
out of
Brazil.
here, but
I know you
hey,
will be wondering how thousands of slaves
we're still fighting
couldn't
up to this
overpower
minute.
hundreds of crewmen.
But not
well,
back.
there
There
was
is a
one
fight,
popular
battling.
situation where African
Cause
slave trades
we fight
were
through the
bolted
years
and
and now
took
we are
over their
battling.
ships.
Oh, no.
The detail of this story is as chilling as it is fascinating. We will get to that shortly, but keep in mind that the slave
So,
traders were armed and typically had the slaves in
the whole
chains
concept
before transporting.
affecting
Anyways, let's finish
the
up
soul
on
of
the
boy
journey
for a
and the
girl.
economics
All
of
of
the
this get
transatlantic slave
up
trade.
on with head, man.
And while we
Blood,
may think that all slaves
curses,
transported out of
hey,
Africa were through the transatlantic
we all
route,
suffered as
that
a
is not
people
entirely
from this.
true. The transatlantic slave only made up for half of the total slaves traded and transported out of Africa. It is reported that from AD 650 to 1900, Islamic traders were also exporting slaves out of Africa and sent out a total of 10 million slaves to
We all
Arabia,
suffered
Yemen,
as a
Iran,
people
India,
from this,
and
man.
Iraq. The slaves were transported across the Sahara Desert, the Red Sea, and the Indian Ocean, while some slaves were also enslaved but remained in Africa. Many of the slaves captured and transported in the transatlantic slave trade were taken from the region bordering the Gulf of Guinea.
No
The
joke.
slave activities in this region were excessive, that the section of the African coast in countries like Togo, Benin, and Nigeria
Broken-
was even referred to
broken
as the slave
families
coast.
are-
A
you
majority
see
of the
the
slaves
effect.
were taken from West Central Africa.
Our woman them
In the early stages of
against
the
us.
transatlantic slave trade,
I know,
the Portuguese
hey,
generally
it's
bought
so funny.
Africans
The
who were
sisters-
captured
some of
as
the sisters
slaves
them a
during
come
tribal
out.
wars. But as the demand for
And I
slaves
tell
increased,
our
the
woman them,
Portuguese
say, hey, them
began
are the
to
product
enter
of the
the
white man,
interior
man.
of Africa to forcibly take captives. In the 1690s,
They are the product,
number
and,
of people taken
hey,
out of Africa
for
yearly
mash up the community,
reached about
and it's
30,000,
all
and a
clamped
century
down.
later, the number grew to about 85,000 per year. During the 1700 and 1850, it was estimated that more than 8 out of 10 Africans were forced into the slave trade, successfully crossed the Atlantic. In the period between 1821 and 1830, about 80,000 people were leaving Africa yearly, and within the next 20 years, before the abolition of slave trade,
listen,
over a
man,
million more Africans
all
were sent
suffered as a
across the
people from
Atlantic
this.
to America.
So with that,
By
I'm gonna say
1820,
shalom.
almost
All
4
praises to
Africans for
Yahweh,
every
Ba
1
Shem
European
Yoshai.
had been
Ba
transported
Shem Shem,
across
no
the
matter who you
Atlantic,
be.
and 4 out of
Slack
5
it, no
women
matter who you
who
be
crossed
on
the
the
Atlantic
planet.
were from Africa. The majority of enslaved Africans
You suffer
brought
from
to
this.
British North America
Your
arrived between
history,
1720
no matter
and
who you be
1780.
in the nation of
Africans
Israel.
who were sent to Brazil were mostly from
But
Angola,
Israel shall be
and
saved
those
anyways.
who were transported to North America,
So no matter
including
who you be
Caribbean,
out of the 12
were taken
tribes, you
mainly
all
from
suffer
West
from
Africa.
this. The whole race of
Although
us.
just about 6% of African captives were sent to British North
Yeah,
America.
you might take some
in
money from the bank
1825.
and get
The U.S. population
certain
included
connection,
about
information.
1/4
There's
of the
nothing wrong with
people of
information,
African
and
descent in
you
the
get
Western
certain
Hemisphere.
degrees of-
Interestingly, the condition of slavery in
And you
America
know, you have
was
certain
totally
links
different
we can
from
make
that
it get.
in the U.S.
Yeah, there's nothing
But
wrong with
before
using
we
the
delve
system
into
and
these
having certain
mind-boggling
angles
details,
and climbing
let's
up,
talk
but
about the revolt
the powers,
of
but
1839.
you still suffer.
Remember,
You
I
get looked
mentioned this
down
earlier.
up
In
on
1839,
in
slave
this society.
traders were once again hoping to get another shipment of slaves across the Atlantic.
all
But
suffered
unlike
from
previous
this.
voyages, they were not ready
From
for the
the head
surprise
come
this
down.
particular voyage would be bringing their way.
Amen.
The
Listen.
slave ship named Amistad
This go
had
even
about
way deeper than
100
what me
slaves
talk.
on board.
I
As the
just-
ship moved
the
near the
Spirit of
coast
the
of
Lord,
Cuba,
why
the
we hear
unwilling
now.
passengers of the ship
Just the spirit of the Lord. The most I am go look more, go some more. Hey, does the spirit of the Lord have these, have we, in these corrupted bodies? A pull down godlike spirit for do the work. And surviving in this society. Anything can happen. Hey, we can't even trust what woman them. You know, the household broken, the family broken, or woman them, hey, are just strictly whores. All of that, man. Woman them, like, blaring out, promiscuous, all of that combined, man. So, just the spirit, why are the Lord, why even 2/3, even couple, hey, even couple of our people, man. That's why our people. The scripture said, my people shall face the east. But we still got to teach them. And the next thing too, we don't know we don't know who are the elect, so we still got to push out the word. That's when the Most High shut it off. We can say, yeah, we'll push out. So, listen, man, the Lord, man, have mercy, grace. And the grace said, I slightly see it. Because it's an accuracy, men in this truth. I ain't gonna tell you next month. I ain't gonna tell you next month, hey, we gonna be out of here. No, I ain't gonna tell you that. I ain't gonna tell you next 2 months, we gonna be out of here. Because no man know the hour nor the date. No man know the hour or the date, man. Where the Most High gonna send, but we know we're close. We depend on God, because the thief, we know said we know the hours them now where the thief are come now. So yeah, we up now. At any given time, him can break in. Break into this world. Crack the Euro, the belt there, crack the skies and come. But we know we're close, because we know in another hour there, the thief. That's our next lesson to you now. The thief, our time. So we
of the ship who were recently abducted.
listen, man. depend with God, man, but just by the Spirit of the Most High, man. Just by the Spirit of the Most High. Why? Just by the Spirit of the Most High. Why? We here now. It is too wicked for us. We get brought down low. And in brought down low too. Hey, we face hell na that. So hey, with that, I'm going to say shalom, all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Karkadash, double honors to the elders of Israel, the apostles, the bishops in Israel, the priests, hey, the captains and deacons, shalom to you all throughout the world. We are pushing truth, we are hope.
The ship, who were recently abducted from Africa, numbering about 53, revolted aggressively. The revolters were led by Joseph Sink. They killed the captain and cook, and only spared the life of the Spanish navigator so that he can sail them home back to Sierra Leone. However, the navigator managed to sail the Amistad northward. 2 months later, the U.S. Navy intercepted and seized